Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We will be getting to the new material here in regards to our Medicaid series here in a moment, but first, the trigger warnings. And it goes thusly since it's a much shorter for these types of videos, folks. We have this channel marked not for kids for a reason. We do use profanity and speak on dark subjects, so if your child is 16 and younger and watching this, parental supervision is very much advised. Also, on this channel, we do not support either Republican nonsense or Democrat nonsense. If you want to know my opinion in regards to politics, well, you might have to meet me someday and get that in person, because I would never be allowed on any platform probably ever again. So, just that trigger warning, alright? Now, if you see the APSI up there and it's familiar to you because you've been on this channel before, it's because the APSI group is one of the branches is out here in Missouri, and I was one of the members. I was the head of the legislative committee in particular, and one of the folks that helped roll out the Employment First initiative starting in, that was 2010, I believe, when we got started with all of that. Employment First has to do with, instead of, when we're talking transition services, immediately getting these folks on Social Security and then putting them in a group home or assisted living. It was a campaign to assist in either supporting people with developmental disabilities being able to get into secondary education, or be able to promote and assist with getting folks with developmental disabilities jobs based out of and within their own communities. Part of the ways that we were able to roll out the Employment First initiative and take it statewide was by the means of funding through Medicaid. Now, that's not just for my state either. Everywhere we've been pushing Employment First for over the last decade has received most of the funding from here. Now, it doesn't just fund the efforts to get this initiative really tucked in to services in regards for folks with developmental disabilities. It also covers things through organizations such as ART, with things such as job coaching, teaching job skills, programs like I was able to get into, that if you have all the credits you need to graduate, they will assist you in getting in early to college at least half of the day and begin to earn your credits towards an associate's degree. Unfortunately, I never did, in spite of getting the degree, get to work in graphic design, but that's an entirely different subject. So, we're going to be going through that today. And of course, I will be including the link to this particular article right there in the description. Also, APSI is a non-for-profit. Not all the funding comes through Medicaid for very obvious reasons. That was something that began to get initiated a little bit early on, because we noticed, particularly in the 2010s when we were getting off the ground and the Medicaid cuts hit, that we could not depend on that Medicaid funding alone. So if you would like to assist in their wonderful work that they do for folks with developmental disabilities, you'll see a link on their website there. You can go ahead and donate, or you can also find ways to get involved. All right. So, title of this, Medicaid Makes Supported Employment Possible. One moment, please. Sorry, allergies. All right. So, from the Kaiser Commission on Medicaid and the Uninsured, it is fair to say that Medicaid has been the principal engine of expanded access to home and community-based services that make independent living and community integration possible for people with disabilities as well as elderly Americans. In fact, that is the entire reason we began this series in the first place, because we are dealing with individuals sitting in our Congress and Senate that do not have a single idea exactly what they are doing with these cuts, where that money gets spent, how it gets spent, how it benefits communities, how it helps lift us developmentally disabled folks out of poverty, and actually works toward lessening the load in regards to those who do end up needing more intensive Medicaid funding. When we tell you these people don't know what they're doing, they really have no idea what in the name of God they're doing. So, let's continue here. Medicaid helps ensure individuals with disabilities are fully integrated into society and prevents unnecessary and unwanted institutionalization. So this really began to kick into gear around the late 1970s with the closing of the majority of the state institutions with, the institutions movement. Unfortunately, some of them morphed into schools like JRC, so our work there is far from being done, but that's a completely different subject. A variety of efforts have focused on shifting as much of Medicaid long-term services and supports funding away from institutions, and since 2013, more than half of LTSS nationally are provided in community settings, although this percentage varies from state to state. So in other words, that's going to be in-home direct care staff, in-home nursing staff for those who are more medically fragile. It's job coaching, it's transportation. It pretty much touches almost every single aspect of a person with developmental disabilities life that is within the service system. Now there are issues there, and we will eventually get into that within this series, because I've seen the problem for years. I've been bitching about the glaring problem and elephant in the room in regards with forcing Medicaid to fund everything for years. But the reality is there is no infrastructure. There is no alternative funding. We don't even have a skeleton of an idea as to what can take the place of all this when we have our government gutting it. And that's what I mean saying they're slashing blindly. You know, what they're doing is very, very dangerous. But we'll get into that later on in this series that was supposed to be a mini-series. Nationally, approximately 80% non-elderly Medicaid beneficiaries with disabilities who use LTSS receive services in the community instead of institutions. Let's go ahead and continue. Medicaid is a major funder of employment services and supports for individuals with disabilities. In states like mine, it is pretty much the sole source of funding, which in my opinion, where the problem is, it makes Medicaid the gateway for these types of services. But again, that's a separate subject. We will, hopefully, if the government doesn't do anything else harebrained and crazy, eventually get to that topic. But yeah, as things stand right now, for states like mine in particular, any kind of community-based, whether it is job services, job skills, life skills, assisted living, direct care staff, community integrators, secondary help and assistance in getting into secondary education, all of that as it stands right now, Medicaid. Let me continue. Under 1950C HCBS waivers, the HCBS state plan option, and the managed care delivery system waiver, states can offer services that specifically support an employment goal through what are called habilitation services, which can fund any combination of the following vocational job-related discovery or assessment: person-centered employment planning, which, guess what? I was one of the very first individuals within my state to get in the Employment First initiative. One of the very first, because they immediately made that a part of my overall person-centered therapy and person-centered planning treatment program that I've been a part of for multiple decades. Let me continue, sorry. Job placement, job development, negotiation with prospective employers, job analysis. This is an area where they look to try and find what are your hidden skills and talents. And they've really beefed up on that job analysis, especially for us neurodivergent folks. It originally started out as Missouri Folk Rehab Autism Spectrum Disorder Pilot Project, which I was one of the folks who acted as a consultant when we were first mapping out what a job analysis would look like, how we would need to change it specifically in dealing with folks with autism. Later, with much persuasion, we were able to add in the rest of us neurodivergent folks in there as well, so that we can not look at those hyperfixations as something awful, but as something that we could use to help get them into a job they'll actually enjoy out in the community. So that's where job carving comes in right there. Training and systematic instruction. A lot of VOTEC programs get funding through Medicaid for folks like myself to be able to get there, get trained, to go out and do welding or learn how to become a mechanic, or HVAC is pretty big, that sort of thing. Job coaching, benefit support, training and planning, transportation, asset development, career advancement services, and other workplace support services that enable the participant to be successful in integrating into the job setting. Available services can be offered to any target group for whom they would be beneficial, both obtaining and retaining integrated community employment. Let's continue here. In addition to habilitation services, the following are examples of services covered by Medicaid that can be used to assist with employment. Personal assistance services. Assist an individual with disability to perform daily activities on and off the job. So, in particular, this really kicks in at the very beginning of the job. You see, they don't usually just have the job coach walk away once you're able to obtain the position. For the first couple of weeks, the job coach remains there with you, along with your trainers, to make sure you're fully understanding what's going on, what's expected of you. Everything from making sure your uniform, if that's the type of job you get into, is perfectly taken care of, all of that sort of thing. Peer support services, which offers counseling and other support services to eligible adults with mental illness or substance use disorders. Targeted case management services. I also count that as my overall person-centered planning therapy. One of the keystones or within my treatment program was heavily focused on that. In particular, right as I was going into transition services. can be used in part to help individuals gain employment, including assessment and developing a treatment plan that can include employment and related supports. And because we live in a world that every time people hear the word trans, they freak out, allow me to elaborate. When I use the word trans when speaking specifically to things like Medicaid, what that actually means, folks, and God, it's annoying I even have to do this, is transition age. Essentially, what that means is that general age that a person with developmental disabilities is getting ready to transfer from high school life into secondary education or the workforce. Please don't confuse it with everything else. By God, I'm tired of having to repeat myself, but I've already managed to get in trouble for that once. Y'all, some of y'all need a whole lot of therapy. That's all I'm saying. Jeez. Rehabilitation services. Restorative or remedial services for an individual who has a condition that has resulted in a loss of functioning, such as autistic shutdown, folks. In addition to typical rehabilitation services, the Medicaid rehab option can be used for employment-related services such as peer support, training in social skills, or counseling. As the payer of last resort, Medicaid cannot pay for employment services and support available via other sources, such as public vocational rehabilitation, VR, the state workforce developmental system, and educational agencies. VR plays an important and critical role in assisting with employment, and Medicaid-funded services work in partnership with VR and other funding sources. So essentially what that means is VR comes in there kind of like a job counselor, right? And they work with job programs through places like ARC or Easter Seals, people of that nature, to assist us in obtaining employment or getting into secondary education. VR is not doing it by itself. Medicaid is not doing it by itself. It's all intermingled, which is why cutting Medicaid can get so hairy and way more complicated than the individuals who are cutting it begin to understand. Let me continue here. However, these other sources do not have the capacity or resources to provide the full level of employment services needed by individuals with significant disabilities, particularly long-term supports. Without Medicaid, many individuals with disabilities would be unable to obtain necessary assistance and services to find and maintain employment. A lot of folks out here in particularly rely on things such as assistance through Medicaid to be able to afford assistive devices. A lot of those electronic communication devices, folks, they are not cheap. They are not cheap. I haven't looked at what their prices were today, but like back in the day, yeah, we're not talking chump change here, okay? Without that funding, they would have not been able to get a hold of those devices to assist in being able to find and maintain employment. Particularly since, whether I like it or not, all jobs require at least some minimal form of communication. This is particularly true for individuals with developmental disabilities. Medicaid is primary, if not exclusive, funder for employment services and supports available from state agencies serving individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So you see, again, exactly what I was mentioning there at the very beginning of the video. Sole funder. Sole. So one of the things I find interesting in regards to the GOP, other than what I have already stated, is the fact that in regards to Medicaid, they wanted to start putting disclaimers on there that, mandated employment to keep on the services. What they don't realize is that it's Medicaid that is funding the services that help assist us in getting jobs out in our communities. So essentially, they're cutting their nose off to spite their face. You are removing the financial support that would assist in helping us get community-based jobs. And then, afterwards, put in there mandate in regards to being employed. So Republicans, this is the entirety of the reason I am doing this series. I need you to hear what I am saying here. Your cuts to Medicaid is also a cut to all the job programs, job training, and assistance into secondary education that you're demanding that we get to stay on Medicaid. Okay? You are taking away our ability to get assistance to do the things that you are mandating. Seriously think on it. Seriously think on it. All right. Now, we obviously have some other articles to go. And on the weekends, I do like to try to keep it short with the Medicaid videos when it's actually possible. So we'll start reading through these starting tomorrow. And also, I do want to announce, much to my chagrin, because our president and our health secretary are not all with it when it comes to autism research. We are going to start doing a new series. And I've decided to call it Down the Rabbit Hole. What that series is going to be about is, first we're going to go basically through the entire history of the anti-vax movement, with a particular focus on the bizarre idea that vaccines, well, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? There has never been proof at any point in time, in spite of multiple studies being done over the last several decades, that vaccines have anything to do with my diagnosis whatsoever. So let me say it for the morons in the back. Vaccines do not cause autism. Vaccines do not cause people to be neurodivergent. Vaccines assist me in protecting me against the types of diseases that used to wipe out full populations. But because of who we have in office now, apparently a deep dive is needed. So, we are going to start going down the rabbit hole, folks. We'll go again. I may do that here in a minute. Not really sure, to be honest. But at least for this video, we're going to go ahead and close out here. We don't get very many views on this channel, and the few we do tend to get removed from time to time. So folks, if you could please, don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and please don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time. And as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea absolutely do hope you have a good one. Pray for me, folks. It's a special rabbit hole we're about to go down. And every time I am having to do this, yeah, this stupid, it burns. Bye-bye, everyone.